The lunar prophecy, in the heart of a vast, star-dusted land called Lumora, where rolling hills met crystalline rivers under a sky that seemed to hold secrets older than time itself, a prophecy was whispered. It was said that a ruler would one day rise, born of the moon's own light, destined to unite the fractured peoples of the realm under a single banner. This ruler would not merely govern, but would embody the celestial, their reign marked by a palace that captured the moon's radiance in a way no mortal structure ever had. The prophecy, etched into the ancient tablets of the Starlit Archives, spoke of a child whose birth would be heralded by a lunar eclipse, their life intertwined with the tides of the cosmos. This was the tale that had stirred the hearts of Lumora's people for generations, and it was the tale that would herald the coming of Empress Seraphina. Lumora was a land of contrasts, its regions divided by both geography and ambition. To the north lay the Frostveil Mountains, their peaks cloaked in eternal snow, home to clans who revered the stars as their guides. To the south, the Verdant Expanse stretched in endless waves of green, where farmers and poets alike drew inspiration from the earth's bounty. The east was bordered by the Sapphire Coast, where merchants sailed under the watchful gaze of the moon, trading stories as readily as goods. And in the west, the Emberfall Deserts burned under a relentless sun, their nomadic tribes weaving tales of survival and mystery. These regions, though bound by shared history, had long been divided by petty rivalries and mistrust. The prophecy promised a leader who could bridge these divides, but many doubted such a figure could exist. The prophecy's origins were murky, passed down through oral traditions and guarded by the keepers of the Starlit Archives, a secretive order of scholars who dwelled in a cliffside monastery overlooking the Sapphire Coast. Their ancient texts, written in a script that shimmered under moonlight, spoke of a child born during a rare lunar eclipse, when the moon turned the color of ember and shadow. This child would bear a mark, a crescent-shaped birthmark on their left palm, and would be destined to rule from a palace that reflected the moon's light once a year, a spectacle that would affirm their divine right. The keepers, though reclusive, ensured the prophecy reached every corner of Lumora, carried by wandering bards and whispered in village squares. It was into this world of hope and skepticism that Seraphina was born, in a small village nestled in the Verdant Expanse under the shadow of a lunar eclipse. A midwife named Ilara delivered a girl whose cries seemed to echo the night's quiet mystery. The child's left palm bore a faint crescent mark, visible only when held to the light. Ilara, a woman versed in the old tales, knew instantly what this meant. She wrapped the infant in a blanket woven with silver thread and carried her to the village elder, a stooped man named Torin, who had studied the prophecy's words since boyhood. Torin's hands trembled as he examined the child, his eyes tracing the delicate mark. "This is no ordinary birth," he murmured. "The moon has spoken." Word of the child spread slowly at first, carried by travelers and traders who passed through the village. Seraphina's parents, a farmer named Lyrian and a weaver named Maiev, were simple folk, unaccustomed to the weight of destiny. They named their daughter Seraphina, meaning fiery one, for the way her eyes seemed to glow with an inner light, even as a babe. They raised her in their modest home, teaching her the rhythms of the land, how to sow seeds, mend cloth, and read the stars. Yet even as a child, Seraphina was different. She would sit for hours under the night sky, her small hands tracing patterns in the air as if communing with the heavens. Villagers spoke of her in hushed tones, some with awe, others with unease. "She's too quiet," they'd say, "too knowing for one so young." By the time Seraphina was 10, the keepers of the Starlit Archives had heard of her. A delegation arrived in the village, their robes shimmering like liquid moonlight. The leader, a woman named Keeper Althea, was tall and stern, her eyes sharp as the edge of a blade. She examined Seraphina's palm, holding it under a lantern that mimicked lunar glow. The crescent mark seemed to pulse, and Althea's expression softened for a moment before hardening again. "The prophecy is clear," she said. "This child must be trained, prepared for what lies ahead." Lyrian and Maiev protested, their hearts heavy at the thought of losing their daughter, but Althea's authority was unyielding. "The moon's will is not a choice," she said. "It is a calling." Seraphina was taken to the Starlit Archives, a journey that spanned weeks across the Verdant Expanse and along the Sapphire Coast. The monastery was a marvel, carved into cliffs that glowed faintly at night, its halls lined with books and artifacts that hummed with ancient power. There, Seraphina was schooled in history, astronomy, and governance, but also in the subtler arts, how to listen to the wind, interpret dreams, and sense the moods of a crowd. The keepers were strict, but kind, recognizing in her a spark that went beyond prophecy. She was quick to learn, her mind as sharp as the crescent on her palm, yet she carried a quiet humility that disarmed even the most skeptical among them. As years passed, Seraphina grew into a young woman of striking presence. Her hair, dark as the night sky, fell in waves to her shoulders, and her eyes, a deep silver gray, seemed to reflect the moon itself. She spoke little, but when she did, her words carried weight, calming disputes among the keepers or inspiring the younger acolytes. Yet she was not without doubts. Late at night, when the monastery was silent, she would climb to the highest balcony and gaze at the moon, wondering if she could truly bear the burden of a prophecy she had not chosen. "Am I enough?" she whispered to the stars, her voice swallowed by the vastness of the night. The prophecy, however, was not without its skeptics. In the Frostveil Mountains, clan leaders scoffed at the idea of a southern girl ruling them. Prophecy or no. In the Emberfall Deserts, nomads whispered that the moon's light was a trick, a story spun to control the gullible. Even in the Sapphire Coast, Where the keepers held sway, merchants grumbled that a ruler tied to the moon would favor mysticism over trade. These doubts reached Seraphina even in the monastery, carried by letters or the occasional visitor. She read them quietly, her face unreadable, but each word planted a seed of resolve. She would not merely inherit a throne, she would earn it. By her 18th year, the time had come for Seraphina to step into the world beyond the archives. The keepers had prepared her as best they could, but the prophecy demanded more than knowledge. It demanded proof. The lunar eclipse that had marked her birth would return in her 20th year, and with it, the chance to build the Moon Palace, the structure that would reflect the moon's light and affirm her destiny. The keepers sent word across Lumora, calling for artisans, architects, and scholars to aid in its creation. The land buzzed with anticipation, but also with tension. If Seraphina succeeded, she would unite Lumora under a single crown. If she failed, the prophecy would fade into myth, and Lumora's divisions would deepen. As Seraphina stood on the cliffs of the Starlit Archives, her palm tingling under the moonlight, she felt the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her, not just those of the keepers, but of a land waiting to believe. The prophecy had set her path, but it was hers to walk. The lunar prophecy was no longer just a tale. It was her story, and she would write its next chapter, create an image for this content, collectively in 2D cartoonic, calm style. The cliffs of the Starlit Archives, where Seraphina had spent her formative years, overlooked a world that was both vast and divided. Lumora, with its patchwork of regions and peoples, had not known a unified ruler in centuries. The prophecy of the lunar-born sovereign had lingered in the collective imagination, but it was Seraphina's emergence from the archives that turned whispers into reality. At 18, she stepped out of the monastery's shadow, her silver-gray eyes reflecting a quiet determination, her crescent-marked palm a symbol of destiny. The second chapter of her story, the rise to power, would test her resolve, her wisdom, and her ability to bridge fractured land. This was the moment when Seraphina would claim her place, not just as a figure of prophecy, but as Empress of Lumora. The journey to her coronation began in the Verdant Expanse, where Seraphina returned to her childhood village. The rolling fields, once familiar, now seemed small against the weight of her purpose. Her parents, Lyrian and Maiev, greeted her with tearful pride, their simple home unchanged despite the years. The villagers, too, gathered to see the girl who had left as a child and returned as a figure of legend. They noted her poise, the way her dark hair caught the light like a moonlit river. But they also saw the girl who had once run barefoot through the fields. "She's still ours," they murmured, though they knew her path would take her far beyond their village. Seraphina's first task was to rally support across Lumora's regions, a challenge that required more than the prophecy's promise. The keepers of the Starlit Archives, led by Keeper Althea, devised a plan, a grand tour of the realm, where Seraphina would meet its leaders, address its people, and prove her worth. The tour began in the Verdant Expanse, where the agrarian communities were receptive but cautious. They valued stability, and Seraphina spoke to them of unity, of shared harvests and protected lands. Her words, delivered in a calm yet resonant voice, stirred hope. Farmers pledged their loyalty, not to the prophecy, but to the young woman who seemed to understand their struggles. From the Expanse, Seraphina traveled north to the Frostveil Mountains. The clans there were fierce, their loyalty earned through strength and shared hardship. Their chieftain, a grizzled warrior named Kale, eyed her crescent mark with suspicion. "The moon is cold," he said, his voice like gravel. "What does it know of our fires?" Seraphina did not argue. Instead, she spent a week among the clans, learning their songs, sharing their meals, and climbing their peaks under starlight. On the final night, she stood before their council fire and spoke of a Lumora, where the mountain's strength would anchor the realm. Not isolated, Kyle, moved by her sincerity, offered a rare nod. "You may be moonborn," he said, "but you have a fire in you." The clans swore allegiance, their banners raised in her name. The Sapphire Coast was next, a bustling region of merchants and sailors who prized wealth and freedom above all. Here, Seraphina faced skepticism wrapped in politeness. The merchants' council, led by a shrewd woman named Vera, questioned whether a lunar ruler could understand trade routes and tariffs. Seraphina listened patiently, then proposed a system of shared ports that would benefit both coastal and inland regions. She spoke of the moon's tides, how they guided ships and could guide prosperity. Vera, impressed by her pragmatism, agreed to support her, provided the Moon Palace, still a concept, would include a trade hall. Seraphina agreed, sealing the alliance with a handshake that felt like a contract. The Emberfall Deserts proved the most challenging. The nomadic tribes revered the sun, not the moon, and saw the prophecy as a coastal myth. Their leader, a mystic named Zara, met Seraphina under a canopy of stars, her eyes sharp with distrust. "The moon fades," Zara said. "Why should we follow its child?" Seraphina, undaunted, shared stories of the desert's beauty, learned from her time at the archives. She spoke of a palace that would honor all of Lumora's elements: sun, moon, earth, and sea. Zara, though not fully convinced, admired her respect for their ways. "Return when your palace shines," she said, "then we will see." It was not a pledge, but it was a door left open. As Seraphina traveled, her reputation grew. Bards began to sing of the lunar-born, their ballads weaving her deeds into the fabric of Lumora's lore. Yet she remained grounded, often stopping to speak with common folk, fishers, weavers, shepherds, who saw in her a ruler who listened. Her humility, paired with the prophecy's mystique, began to knit Lumora's regions together. Though not without tension, Rival factions, particularly in the Frostveil and Emberfall, whispered of their own claimants to power, dismissing Seraphina as a girl propped up by old tales. She heard these murmurs, but chose to focus on her work, trusting that actions would outshine doubt. The coronation was set for the eve of her 19th birthday, to be held in the Verdant Expanse at a site chosen for its view of the moon. The keepers oversaw the preparations, transforming a meadow into a ceremonial ground adorned with silver banners and lanterns that mimicked starlight. Representatives from every region gathered, their presence a testament to Seraphina's efforts. The Frostveil clans arrived with furs and axes, the Sapphire merchants with silks and jewels, the Verdant farmers with wreaths of grain. Even a small contingent from the Emberfall Deserts appeared, Zara among them, their eyes wary but curious. As the moon rose, full and luminous, Seraphina stepped forward in a gown woven with threads that shimmered like moonlight. Keeper Althea placed a circlet on her head, crafted from a rare metal said to have fallen from the stars. The circlet was simple, its only adornment a single crescent gem that matched her palm's mark. Seraphina knelt, her voice steady as she swore to serve Lumora, to honor its people, and to fulfill the prophecy's promise. The crowd was silent, the air thick with anticipation, until Althea declared, "Rise, Empress Seraphina, light of Lumora." Cheers erupted, echoing across the meadow, though some voices, those of skeptics, remained quiet. In the days that followed, Seraphina established her court in a temporary hall in the Verdant Expanse. As the Moon Palace was yet to be built, she appointed advisors from each region: Kael for the Frostveil, Vera for the Sapphire Coast, and a farmer named Tilda from her own village for the Expanse. Zara declined a formal role, but sent a desert-crafted amulet as a gesture of cautious goodwill. Seraphina's first act as Empress was to commission a census to understand Lumora's people and their needs. Her second was to begin plans for the Moon Palace, a structure that would not only fulfill the prophecy, but serve as a symbol of unity. Yet even as she rose, challenges loomed. The census revealed disparities: wealth in the Sapphire Coast, scarcity in the Emberfall. That would test her diplomacy. Whispers of rival claimants grew louder, particularly from a Frostveil warlord named Dren, who called the prophecy a southern trick, and the Moon Palace, still a dream, would require resources and faith that not all were willing to give. Seraphina, now Empress, stood at the threshold of her reign, her heart steady, but her mind racing. The prophecy had brought her here, but it was her actions that would define her rule. As she looked to the moon each night, she felt its light, not as a burden, but as a guide, illuminating the path to a united Lumora. With her coronation behind her, Empress Seraphina stood as the unifying hope of Lumora, a land still stitching itself together under her nascent rule. The prophecy that had guided her path now pointed to its most tangible promise: the Moon Palace, a structure destined to capture and reflect the moon's light in a singular, awe-inspiring display. Once a year, this palace would not merely be a seat of power, but a testament to Seraphina's lunar heritage, a beacon to silence skeptics and bind Lumora's disparate regions. The third chapter of her story, the unveiling of the Moon Palace, marked a pivotal moment where vision would meet reality and Seraphina's leadership would face its first true test. The task of building the Moon Palace began with the selection of its site, a decision that required both symbolic and practical considerations. Seraphina, guided by her advisors and the keepers of the Starlit Archives, chose a plateau at the heart of Lumora, where the borders of the Verdant Expanse, Frostveil Mountains, Sapphire Coast, and Emberfall Deserts converged. Known as the Crescent Plain, it was a flat expanse, ringed by low hills, its soil rich with quartz that glinted under moonlight. The location was neutral, belonging to no single region, yet accessible to all. "This will be Lumora's heart," Seraphina declared, her voice calm but resolute. As she stood on the plain with her council, the choice quelled early disputes among regional leaders who saw the fairness in a shared site. Though some grumbled about the cost and effort required to design the palace, Seraphina called upon Lumora's finest minds. From the Sapphire Coast came architect Lyrian, a wiry man whose coastal towers were said to withstand the fiercest storms. The Frostveil Mountains sent engineer Torva, a woman whose bridges spanned icy chasms with unyielding strength. The Verdant Expanse offered artisan Mira, a sculptor whose works captured the soul of the land in stone and wood. Even the Emberfall Deserts contributed, with Zara sending a young mystic named Kadir, who understood the desert's reflective minerals. Seraphina welcomed them all, her silver-gray eyes meeting each with respect. "The palace must reflect all of Lumora," she said. "Your hands will shape our future." The design process was a delicate dance of collaboration and compromise. Lyrian envisioned a structure of soaring spires, their surfaces clad in polished blue stone from the coast to catch the moon's glow. Torva insisted on a foundation strong enough to endure earthquakes. Drawing on mountain granite, Mira proposed intricate carvings of Lumora's landscapes, fields, peaks, waves, and dunes to adorn the walls. Uniting the regions in art, Kadir, quiet but insightful, suggested embedding desert crystals into the spire's tips, which would refract moonlight into a spectrum of colors. Seraphina listened to each, her presence calming heated debates. She sketched her own vision, a central dome open to the sky, where the moon's light would pool during its annual display. The team, inspired by her clarity, agreed on a design that blended their ideas into a harmonious whole. Construction began in the spring as Lumora's regions rallied to provide resources. The Verdant Expanse sent timber and laborers, their hands calloused from years of tilling fields. The Frostveil clans hauled granite, their sledges cutting paths through the snow. The Sapphire Coast supplied blue stone and skilled masons, while the Emberfall Deserts offered rare crystals. Carried across the sands by camel caravans, Seraphina worked alongside them, her simple robes dusted with earth as she carried stones or shared meals with workers. Her presence quelled murmurs of favoritism, though not all were convinced. Some laborers whispered of the cost, fields left untended, trade routes strained, while others saw the palace as a symbol of hope. Seraphina heard their concerns and addressed them in evening gatherings, her voice steady as she spoke of a united Lumora. The palace took shape over months, its form rising like a dream against the crescent plain. The central dome, crafted from translucent quartz, shimmered faintly even in daylight. Spires flanked it, their bluestone surfaces polished to a mirror-like sheen, tipped with Kadir's crystals that sparkled like captured stars. The walls, carved with Mira's designs, told Lumora's story. Waves crashing on the Sapphire Coast, peaks piercing the Frostveil sky, fields rippling in the expanse, and dunes shifting in the Emberfall. The interior was both grand and functional, with halls for governance, a trade chamber for Vera's merchants, and a library for the keeper's texts. At its heart was the Lunar Court, an open-air chamber beneath the dome, where the moon's light would shine. As the palace neared completion, Seraphina faced mounting pressure. The prophecy promised that the palace would reflect moonlight once a year, a spectacle tied to the lunar eclipse that would occur on her 20th birthday. Skeptics, particularly the Frostveil warlord Dren, scoffed at the idea, calling it a child's fantasy. Even Zara, the desert mystic, sent a message urging Seraphina to ensure the palace's light was no trick. The keepers, led by Althea, worked tirelessly to study the prophecy's texts, calculating the eclipse's path to ensure the dome's alignment. Seraphina, though calm in public, felt the weight of doubt. At night, she walked the unfinished halls, her crescent-marked palm pressed to the cool stone, whispering to the moon for guidance. The unveiling was set for the eve of the eclipse, a date that drew thousands to the crescent plain. Pilgrims from every region camped around the palace, their tents a patchwork of Lumora's colors. Merchants set up stalls, bards sang of the lunar-born empress, and children ran through the crowds, clutching lanterns shaped like crescents. Yet tension simmered beneath the festivity. Dren arrived with a retinue of warriors, his presence a challenge. Zara came too, her eyes scanning the palace for signs of deception. Seraphina greeted each leader with grace, her circlet gleaming as she moved through the crowds. But her heart raced. The palace was complete, its beauty undeniable, but its true test lay in the moonlight. As dusk fell, the crowd gathered in the lunar court. The dome above opened to a darkening sky. Seraphina stood at the center, her gown a cascade of silver and blue, her advisors at her side. The moon, already tinged with the eclipse's shadow, hung heavy above. Althea, her robes shimmering, recited the prophecy's words. And the palace shall reflect the moon's light, a beacon of unity, once a year, under the embered sky. The crowd held its breath as the eclipse deepened, the moon turning a deep, fiery red. For a moment, nothing happened, and whispers of doubt began to ripple. Then it began. The dome's quartz caught the moon's light, refracting it into a soft glow that spread across the court. The spire's crystals flared, casting beams of color, blue, gold, violet, across the plain. The carvings on the walls seemed to dance, their landscapes illuminated as if alive. The crowd gasped, some falling to their knees, others weeping. Even Dren's scowl softened, his eyes wide. Zara stepped forward, touching a crystal-tipped spire, and nodded slowly. "The moon speaks," she said, her voice carrying over the silence. Seraphina, her heart swelling, felt the crescent mark on her palm, pulse faintly, as if in communion with the light. The Moon Palace was no longer a promise but a reality, its unveiling a triumph that echoed across Lumora. Yet Seraphina knew this was only a beginning. The light had silenced many doubters, but unity would require more than a single night's wonder. As the crowd dispersed, their lanterns bobbing like stars, Seraphina stood beneath the dome, her gaze on the fading eclipse. The palace was hers, Lumora's, and the moon's. But its true test would come in the days ahead, when faith would need to endure beyond the light. The Moon Palace stood as a beacon at the heart of Lumora, its spires gleaming under daylight, and its dome a silent promise of the prophecy fulfilled. Empress Seraphina, now 20, had woven the first threads of unity across a land long divided. Her coronation and the palace's unveiling, quieting many skeptics. Yet the prophecy's most enduring test lay in the Annual Radiance, the singular night each year when the Moon Palace would reflect the moon's light in a spectacle meant to reaffirm Seraphina's divine mandate. This fourth chapter of her story would see the first of these events, a moment that would draw Lumora's people together in awe, faith, and scrutiny, testing not only the palace's design, but Seraphina's ability to lead through wonder and doubt. The Annual Radiance was tied to the lunar eclipse, a celestial event that occurred each year on the eve of Seraphina's birthday. The prophecy foretold that the palace's quartz dome and crystal-tipped spires would capture the moon's light, transforming it into a radiant display visible across the crescent plain. This was no mere architectural feat, but a spiritual one, meant to symbolize Lumora's unity under a lunar-born ruler. Preparations for the first radiance began months in advance, as Seraphina and her council worked to ensure the event would honor every region while addressing the practical needs of a gathering that would draw thousands. The crescent plain buzzed with activity as the date approached. From the Verdant Expanse came farmers with carts of grain and fruit, setting up communal feasts to feed pilgrims. The Frostveil clans sent warriors to maintain order, their axes sheathed, but their presence a reminder of strength. Sapphire Coast, merchants arrived with silks and lanterns, turning the plain into a vibrant marketplace. Even the Emberfall Deserts contributed, with Zara's nomads bringing tents woven with reflective threads that shimmered under starlight. Seraphina oversaw the preparations with her characteristic calm, walking among the workers, her silver-gray eyes meeting theirs with gratitude. She wore no crown for these tasks, only her simple circlet, its crescent gem, a quiet nod to her destiny. The keepers of the Starlit Archives played a central role, their knowledge of celestial patterns guiding the event. Keeper Althea, her stern demeanor softened by pride in Seraphina, led a team of scholars to recalculate the eclipse's path, ensuring the palace's dome was perfectly aligned. They adjusted the quartz panels, each cut to precise angles, and polished the desert crystals atop the spires until they gleamed. Althea also trained a group of young acolytes to chant the prophecy's verses during the radiance, their voices meant to weave the event into Lumora's spiritual fabric. Seraphina joined these rehearsals, her voice blending with theirs. Though she preferred to listen, her presence a steadying force. The event was not without its challenges. Word of the Radiance had spread beyond Lumora's borders, drawing curious travelers from distant lands who questioned the prophecy's authenticity. Within Lumora, skeptics like the Frostveil warlord Dren remained vocal, arriving with a retinue to see the moon's so-called truth. Zara, the desert mystic, returned as well, her attendance a gesture of goodwill, but also a test. Light is fleeting, she told Seraphina during a private meeting, her voice low. It must prove more than beauty. Seraphina nodded, her calm unshaken. It will prove unity, she replied, her words carrying a quiet conviction that lingered in Zara's mind. As the eve of the radiance arrived, the crescent plain transformed into a sea of light and color. Pilgrims camped in circles around the palace, their fires flickering like earthly stars. Children clutched crescent-shaped pendants, gifts from the sapphire merchants, while bards sang of Seraphina's journey from village girl to empress. The air was thick with anticipation, but also with tension. Rumors circulated that Dren's warriors had been seen scouting the palace's perimeter, and some desert nomads whispered of omens, a hawk circling under a clouded moon. Seraphina, aware of these undercurrents, moved through the crowds, her presence calming fears. She spoke with pilgrims, shared bread with merchants, and even joined a Frostveil warrior in a traditional toast, her laughter disarming his gruff demeanor. At dusk, the lunar court filled with dignitaries, advisors, and common folk, all granted equal place beneath the palace's dome. Seraphina stood at the center, her gown a cascade of silver and blue, the crescent gem on her circlet catching the fading light. Her advisors flanked her, Kyle from the Frostveil, stern but loyal, Vera from the Sapphire Coast, her eyes sharp with calculation, Tilda from the Verdant Expanse, her warmth a counterpoint to the grandeur, and Kadir, the young desert mystic who had stayed to represent Zara's people. Althea stood nearby, her robes shimmering as she prepared to lead the Adur chant. The crowd, thousands strong, spilled beyond the court onto the plain, their lanterns raised like a constellation. As the moon rose, its edge already shadowed by the eclipse, a hush fell. The keeper's acolytes began their chant, their voices rising in a melody that echoed the prophecy's cadence. And the palace shall reflect the moon's light, a beacon of unity, once a year under the embered sky. Seraphina's palm tingled, the crescent mark pulsing faintly as if sensing the moment. The eclipse deepened, the moon turning a deep, blood-red hue, and for a breathless moment, the palace remained dark. Whispers of doubt stirred, Dren's scoff audible, a merchant's sigh heavy with disappointment. Then it happened. The quartz dome caught the moon's light, its panels refracting it into a soft, silver glow that filled the lunar court. The spire's crystals ignited, casting beams of color, blue, gold, violet, and amber, across the plain, painting the Aussie hills in a radiant dance. The carved walls seemed to come alive, their landscapes shimmering as if the verdant fields swayed. The Frostveil peaks gleamed, the sapphire waves crashed, and the Emberfall dunes shifted. The crowd gasped, some falling to their knees, others raising their lanterns higher. A child's laugh broke the silence, followed by cheers that rolled like thunder. Even Dren, his arms crossed, stood transfixed, his warrior's eyes wide with wonder. Zara, standing at the court's edge, touched a crystal beam and smiled faintly. "It is enough," she murmured. Seraphina, her heart swelling, stepped forward to address the crowd. Her voice, though soft, carried across the plain, amplified by the palace's acoustics. "This light is not mine," she said. "It is Lumora's, born of your hands, your lands, your faith. Let it remind us that we are one under the moon's gaze." Her words, simple yet profound, stirred the crowd to a roar of approval. The keeper's chant resumed, weaving her speech into the night's ritual. And the radiance became more than a spectacle. It became a shared moment of belief. The night stretched on, with feasts, songs, and dances under the glowing palace. Seraphina moved among her people, her calm presence a thread binding them. Yet she knew the radiance was only a beginning. Dren's silence was not surrender, and Zara's approval was cautious. The palace's light had proven the prophecy's truth, but unity would require more. Policies to balance wealth, alliances to strengthen trust, and a vision to carry Lumora forward. As the eclipse faded and the moon returned to its silver glow, Seraphina stood alone in the lunar court, her gaze on the stars. The annual radiance had illuminated the palace, but it was her leadership that would illuminate Lumora's future. The first annual radiance had bathed the moon palace in a glow that silenced many of Lumora's skeptics, its light a testament to Empress Seraphina's divine mandate. At 20, she stood as a beacon of hope, her calm presence and crescent marked, palm binding the regions of the Verdant Expanse, Frostveil Mountains, Sapphire Coast, and Emberfall Deserts in a fragile but growing unity. Yet, as the echoes of that radiant night faded, new challenges emerged. The prophecy had promised a lunar-born ruler, but it could not shield Seraphina from the doubts that began to whisper across the land. The fifth chapter of her story would test her resolve, as voices of dissent questioned her heritage, the palace's purpose, and the very foundation of her reign. The whispers began subtly, like ripples on a still lake. In the Frostveil Mountains, Warlord Dren, who had stood grudgingly awed during the radiance, returned to his clans with tales that downplayed the event. A trick of light, he called it in smoky halls, his voice carrying to warriors eager for reasons to resist a southern empress. He claimed the palace's glow was the work of clever artisans, not divine will, and that Seraphina's crescent mark was a convenient coincidence. His words found fertile ground among those who valued their independence over Lumora's unity, and soon pamphlets bearing his accusations circulated in mountain villages, their crude script questioning the prophecy's truth. In the Emberfall Deserts, the doubts took a different form. Zara, the mystic who had cautiously endorsed Seraphina, faced pressure from her own people, the nomads, whose lives revolved around the sun's harsh rhythm, saw the moon palace as a symbol of coastal dominance. Some whispered that the crystals used in the palace's spires, sourced from their deserts, had been exploited, their sacred properties turned into a spectacle for Seraphina's glory. Zara, ever pragmatic, sent a letter to the Empress, her tone respectful but pointed. Light binds hearts for a night, but trust binds them for generations. Prove your palace serves all, or the desert will turn from you. Even the Sapphire Coast, where Seraphina had secured the merchants' support, was not immune. Vera, the shrewd councilwoman, reported grumblings among her peers. The cost of the palace's construction had strained trade routes, and some merchants questioned whether a lunar ruler understood their need for profit over prophecy. "They admire your light, Empress," Vera said during a council meeting, her eyes sharp, "but they hunger for coin." In the Verdant Expanse, Seraphina's home region, the doubts were quieter, but no less troubling. Farmers like Tilda, her advisor, heard murmurs that Seraphina had grown distant, her time in the palace pulling her away from the fields she once knew. Seraphina, seated in the lunar court beneath the Moon Palace's quartz dome, read these reports with a steady hand, her silver-gray eyes betraying no panic. She had anticipated dissent. Lumora's unity was too new, too delicate to be unchallenged, yet the weight of the whispers pressed on her, especially at night when she walked the palace's halls, her crescent mark tingling as if sensing the growing unrest. Keeper Althea, her mentor, advised caution. Doubt is a shadow cast by light, she said, her voice calm but firm. Meet it with truth, not force. Seraphina nodded, resolving to address the whispers, not with decrees, but with actions that would prove her commitment to all of Lumora. Her first step was to convene a grand assembly, inviting leaders and representatives from every region to the Moon Palace. The event was framed as a celebration of the Radiance's success, but its true purpose was to listen and respond to the growing concerns. The crescent plain once again filled with tents and lanterns. Though the mood was less festive than before, Dren arrived with a retinue of warriors, their furs and axes a stark contrast to the palace's elegance. Zara came alone, her desert robes blending with the dusk, her eyes scanning Seraphina for signs of weakness. Vera brought a delegation of merchants, their silks rustling with impatience, while Tilda led farmers who carried simple wreaths of grain, their faces hopeful but wary. Seraphina opened the assembly in the Lunar court, her gown a modest blend of silver and green, reflecting both her lunar heritage and her verdant roots. She stood beneath the dome, the moon not yet risen, and spoke with a clarity that hushed the crowd. "I hear your doubts," she said, her voice carrying to the farthest edges of the court. "The Moon Palace is not mine alone. It is yours, built by your hands, meant to serve your futures. Speak, and I will listen." Her invitation, earnest and unguarded, disarmed many, though Dren's scowl remained fixed. The assembly stretched over days, each region airing its grievances. Dren demanded proof that the palace's light was divine, not mechanical, and suggested a public inspection of its crystals and quartz. Zara asked for the desert's resources to be honored, proposing a shrine within the palace to balance its lunar focus with the sun's power. Vera pressed for trade concessions, arguing that the palace should host a permanent market to offset its costs. Tilda, speaking for the farmers, requested aid for drought-stricken fields, tying their loyalty to tangible support. Seraphina listened, her face calm, her notes meticulous. She promised nothing immediately, instead asking for time to consult her advisors and the keepers. Behind closed doors, the council worked tirelessly. Kyle, the Frostveil chieftain, supported Dren's call for transparency, suggesting a demonstration of the palace's mechanisms to quell rumors. Kadir, the desert mystic, worked with Althea to design a shrine that would honor both sun and moon, a gesture to appease Zara's people. Vera collaborated with Seraphina on a trade plan, proposing a market hall within the palace that would draw merchants year-round. Tilda advocated for a granary system funded by the palace's coffers to support farmers in need. Seraphina, weaving these ideas together, saw a path forward, not to silence doubt, but to transform it into trust. The assembly reconvened a week later, and Seraphina presented her plan. She agreed to Dren's inspection, inviting engineers from all regions to study the palace's design alongside the keepers. The demonstration revealed no tricks, only the careful craftsmanship of quartz and crystal, earning grudging nods from Dren's warriors. For Zara, Seraphina unveiled plans for a sun-moon shrine, its design blending desert motifs with lunar symbols, to be built within the palace grounds. Vera's merchants cheered the announcement of a trade hall, its opening timed to the next radiance. Tilda's farmers received a pledge for granaries, funded by a tax on coastal trade, a compromise Vera accepted with a tight smile. The assembly ended with renewed pledges of loyalty, though not without reservations. Dren departed quietly, his doubts unanswered, but his hostility muted. Zara offered a rare smile, touching Seraphina's crescent-marked palm in a gesture of respect. Vera and Tilda embraced, their region's needs balanced for now. Yet Seraphina knew the whispers would persist. The palace's light had proven her heritage, but governing a divided land required more than miracles. As she stood alone in the lunar court, the moon rising above, she felt the weight of her circlet and the hope of her people. The whispers of doubt had been met, but they would return, and she would face them with the same calm resolve that had carried her this far. The Moon Palace, its spires aglow with the memory of the Annual Radiance, stood as a symbol of Lumora's fragile unity under Empress Seraphina's reign. At 20, she had navigated the whispers of doubt that followed the palace's unveiling, addressing the concerns of the Frostveil Mountains, Sapphire Coast, Verdant Expanse, and Emberfall Deserts with diplomacy and resolve. Yet the prophecy that had crowned her demanded more than unity. It required undeniable proof of her lunar heritage. The sixth chapter of Seraphina's story, The Trial of the Moon, would see her face a celestial challenge that could either cement her reign or unravel it, as Lumora's people watched under the shadow of a rare cosmic event. The trial was foretold in the prophecy's lesser-known verses, guarded by the keepers of the Starlit Archives. These verses spoke of a night of 3 moons, a rare alignment where 3 celestial bodies, a full moon, a rogue comet, and a distant planet, would appear as one in the sky, their combined light testing the lunar-born ruler's connection to the heavens. The keepers calculated that this event would occur on the eve of Seraphina's 21st birthday, a year after the first radiance. The trial required the Moon Palace to channel this unique light, not merely reflecting it, but amplifying it into a display that would affirm Seraphina's divine mandate. Failure, the prophecy warned, would cast doubt on her claim, risking Lumora's fragile unity. Seraphina received the news in the Lunar Court, where Keeper Althea presented the ancient text, its script shimmering under lantern light. "The trial is not just for you," Althea said, her voice steady but grave, "but for Lumora. The people must see the moon's will in you." Seraphina, her silver-gray eyes calm, traced the crescent mark on her palm. She felt the weight of the moment, but also a quiet resolve. The palace had proven its light once. It would do so again, yet she knew the stakes were higher now. Doubts lingered, and the region's loyalty was not yet ironclad. Preparations began in earnest, with Seraphina calling upon her council and the palace's original architects. Lyrian, the Sapphire Coast architect, studied the dome's quartz panels, ensuring they could handle the intensified light of 3 celestial bodies. Torva, the Frostveil engineer, reinforced the spire's foundations, wary of the vibrations that such a cosmic event might cause. Mira, the verdant artisan, crafted new carvings for the Lunar Court, depicting the night of 3 moons to inspire awe. Kadir, the desert mystic, worked with the keepers to align the spire's crystals, his knowledge of reflective minerals crucial to amplifying the light. Seraphina oversaw each step, her presence calming debates and focusing efforts. She spent nights studying the prophecy's texts, her mind racing, but her demeanor steady. The regions of Lumora were invited to witness the trial, a decision that sparked both excitement and tension. The Verdant Expanse sent farmers, their faith in Seraphina strong but tempered by recent droughts. The Sapphire Coast merchants, led by Vera, arrived with goods to trade, seeing the trial as a chance to boost their markets. The Frostveil clans, under Kale's leadership, came with guarded optimism, though Warlord Dren's absence was noted. Rumors swirled that he was rallying dissenters in the mountains. The Emberfall Deserts sent a small delegation, led by Zara herself, her presence a sign of cautious trust. Seraphina greeted each group personally, her simple gown and crescent-gemmed circlet a reminder of her roots and her destiny. As the night of 3 moons approached, the crescent plain became a vibrant encampment. Pilgrims pitched tents, their lanterns casting a soft glow that mirrored the palace's spires. Bards sang of the trial, their songs blending hope with warnings of celestial judgment. Children wove garlands of moonflowers, their petals said to bloom only under lunar light. Yet beneath the festivity, tension simmered. Pamphlets from Dren's followers appeared in the camps, calling the trial a southern ruse and urging resistance. Zara's nomads, though present, kept to themselves, their eyes on the sky for signs of truth. Vera reported whispers among merchants that a failed trial could disrupt trade, while Tilda shared farmers' fears that a cosmic omen might signal worse harvests. Seraphina addressed these concerns in a public gathering days before the trial. Standing on a platform in the Lunar court, she spoke with quiet authority. "The moon does not promise ease," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "It promises truth. Whatever this night reveals, I am Lumora's servant, as are we all." Her words, simple yet profound, eased some fears, though many waited for the sky to speak. That night, alone in her chambers, Seraphina knelt before a window, her crescent mark pressed to the glass. "Guide me," she whispered to the moon, her heart steady, but her mind alive with the stakes. The night of the trial arrived, the sky clear and the air crisp, the lunar court filled with thousands, from regional leaders to common folk, all eyes on the dome above. Seraphina stood at the center, her gown a cascade of silver and indigo, her advisors at her side. Althea led the keepers in a chant, their voices weaving the prophecy's verses into the night. And on the night of 3 moons, the lunar-born shall stand, her palace a mirror to the heaven's will. The crowd held its breath as the moon rose, joined by a comet's fiery streak and a planet's faint glow, their lights merging into a single radiant orb. For a moment, the palace remained dark, and a murmur of unease rippled through the crowd. Seraphina's palm tingled, her breath steady as she waited. Then it began. The quartz dome caught the tripled light, refracting it into a brilliance that filled the court with a soft, otherworldly glow. The spire's crystals flared, casting beams of silver, gold, and crimson across the plain, their colors intertwining like a celestial dance. The new carvings glowed, the 3 moons depicted as if alive, their light pulsing with a chant's rhythm. The crowd gasped, some weeping, others cheering. Zara, standing near Kadir, nodded slowly, her eyes reflecting the light. Vera's merchants clapped, seeing profit in the spectacle's draw. Tilda's farmers raised their garlands, their faith renewed. Yet not all were swayed. A shout broke the reverence. A Frostveil warrior, one of Dren's men, crying, "It's a trick." He pointed to the spires, claiming hidden mechanisms. Seraphina, unflinching, invited him to inspect the crystals alongside Kadir and Torva. The warrior, under the crowd's gaze, found no deceit, his accusations faltering. The moment passed, but it underscored the trial's stakes. Seraphina stepped forward, her voice calm but resonant. "This light is Lumora's," she said. "It shines because we built it together. Let it guide us, not divide us." Her words, echoing through the court, turned the crowd's cheers into a unified roar. The trial of the moon succeeded, its light a triumph that spread across Lumora. Bards wove the night into their songs, and pilgrims carried tales of the 3 moons' glow. Yet Seraphina knew the trial was not an end, but a milestone. Dren's absence and his warrior's outburst hinted at unrest in the Frostveil. Zara's nod was approval, not allegiance. The merchants and farmers though inspired, would need more than light to sustain their loyalty. As the crowd dispersed, Seraphina stood beneath the dome, the fading light of the 3 moons on her face. The trial had proven her heritage, but her true test, governing a united Lumora, lay ahead, its path illuminated but uncertain. The trial of the moon had bathed the moon palace in a celestial glow, affirming Empress Seraphina's lunar heritage and silencing many of Lumora's doubters. At 21, she stood as a symbol of unity, her crescent-marked palm and calm resolve, knitting together the Verdant Expanse, Frostveil Mountains, Sapphire Coast, and Emberfall Deserts. Yet the prophecy that had guided her journey demanded more than a single night's triumph. It called for a legacy that would endure beyond her reign. The 7th and final chapter of Seraphina's story, The Eternal Light, would see her solidify Lumora's unity, resolve the last threads of dissent, and ensure the Moon Palace's radiance would guide future generations. The trial's success had shifted Lumora's mood, with bards singing of the Night of 3 Moons and pilgrims spreading tales of the palace's light. Yet Seraphina knew that light alone could not hold a realm together. The Frostveil warlord, Dren, absent from the trial, continued to stir unrest in the mountains, his pamphlets now calling for a rival council to challenge her rule. In the Emberfall Deserts, Zara's cautious approval had not fully quelled her people's skepticism, with some nomads still viewing the palace as a coastal extravagance. The Sapphire Coast merchants, led by Vera, pressed for greater trade benefits, while the Verdant Expanse farmers, represented by Tilda, sought assurances against future droughts. Seraphina, seated in the lunar court, her silver-gray eyes scanning reports, understood that her reign's true test was to transform fleeting awe into lasting trust. Her first act was to establish the Council of the Crescent, a permanent body with representatives from each region, tasked with advising her and ensuring no voice went unheard. Kyle, the Frostveil chieftain, joined as a voice of strength, his loyalty now firm after the trial. Vera represented the Sapphire Coast, her pragmatism tempered by growing respect for Seraphina. Tilda spoke for the Verdant Expanse, her warmth grounding the council's debates. Zara, after much deliberation, sent Kadir to represent the Emberfall Deserts, his mystic insights balancing the group's practical bent. Seraphina chaired the council herself, her circlet's crescent gem glinting as she listened, her calm presence fostering compromise. The council's first decree was a resource sharing plan. Coastal trade would fund desert wells, mountain stone would build expanse granaries, and all regions would contribute to the palace's upkeep. To address Dren's dissent, Seraphina took a bold step. She traveled to the Frostveil Mountains, unescorted save for Kale and a small retinue, to meet the warlord on his own ground. The journey was arduous, the icy paths testing her endurance, but she refused to falter. In Dren's stronghold, a fortress carved into a cliff, she faced him before his warriors. "I am no trickster," she said, her voice steady, her crescent mark bared. "Judge me by my actions, not my birth." She proposed a Frostveil outpost for the Moon Palace, staffed by mountain warriors, giving them a stake in its legacy. Dren, his scowl softened by her courage, agreed to a truce, though he withheld full allegiance. "Time will tell," he grunted, but his warriors' cheers suggested a shift. In the Emberfall Deserts, Seraphina worked to honor Zara's people. The Sun Moon Shrine, promised during the assembly, was completed within the palace grounds, its design blending desert crystals with lunar motifs. Seraphina invited Zara to its dedication, a ceremony under a full moon where nomads and coastal priests chanted together. Zara, touching the shrine's sun-carved altar, spoke softly to Seraphina. "You see us," she said. "That is enough for now." The desert's loyalty grew, not as fervent as the expanses, but steady, rooted in respect. For the Sapphire Coast, Seraphina expanded the palace's trade hall, making it a hub for merchants across Lumora. Vera oversaw its opening, her merchants thrilled by the influx of goods and visitors. The Verdant Expanse received a network of irrigation channels, funded by coastal taxes, easing farmers' fears of drought. Tilda, walking the fields with Seraphina, wept as water flowed. "You've kept us whole," she said. Seraphina, her hand on Tilda's shoulder, smiled. "We keep each other whole." Yet the prophecy's final demand was the palace itself. Its light had to endure beyond Seraphina's reign. She worked with the keepers to establish the order of the eternal. Light, a group of scholars and artisans tasked with maintaining the palace's quartz dome and crystals. They trained successors from every region, ensuring the Annual Radiance would continue. Seraphina also decreed that the palace be open to all, not just rulers, a place for pilgrims, students, and traders to gather. Its halls a living symbol of unity. As her 22nd birthday approached, Seraphina prepared for the second Annual Radiance, a moment to seal her legacy. The crescent plain filled once more, its camps vibrant with lanterns and songs. Dren attended, his warriors now part of the palace guard. Zara arrived with a larger delegation, their tents adorned with sun and moon motifs. Vera's merchants turned the plain into a bustling market, while Tilda's farmers shared a bountiful harvest. The lunar court, packed with thousands, hummed with anticipation as the moon rose, its light steady and full. Seraphina stood beneath the dome, her gown a blend of all regions' colors: green, blue, white, and amber. The keeper's chant filled the air, and the palace glowed, its beams casting a spectrum across the plain. The crowd cheered, their unity palpable, no longer just a prophecy's promise, but a lived reality. Seraphina spoke, her voice calm but resonant. "This light is eternal, because we are," she said. "Lumora is one, not by my hand, but by ours. The cheers grew louder, echoing into the night. After the radiance, Seraphina walked the palace's halls, her steps light but purposeful. The whispers of doubt had faded, replaced by a shared vision. Dren's truce held, his warriors now proud palace guards. Zara's people visited the shrine regularly, their trust deepening. Vera's trade hall thrived, and Tilda's fields flourished. The Council of the Crescent met monthly, its debates spirited but constructive. The Order of the Eternal Light trained its first apprentices, their hands already shaping the palace's future. In her chambers, Seraphina stood before a window, the moon high above. Her crescent mark no longer tingled. It felt part of her, as natural as her breath. She thought of her parents, Lyrian and Maeve, who had visited the palace and wept with pride. She thought of the keepers, whose faith had guided her, and of Lumora's people, whose hands had built this moment. The prophecy had been her path, but the eternal light was their creation. A Lumora united, its palace a beacon for all time. As she gazed at the stars, Seraphina knew challenges would come. Droughts, disputes, new skeptics, but she also knew Lumora was ready, its regions bound by shared purpose. The Moon Palace would shine each year, its light a reminder of what they had achieved together. Seraphina, the lunar-born empress, was no longer just a prophecy's child. She was Lumora.